Right, so considering that I've just had them arrive, I thought today I'd go over the Urza's Iron Alliance Commander deck. Yes. Okay, so here's the commander, Urza Chief Artificer, 3 and an Esper for a legendary human artificer, a 4/5 with affinity for artifact creatures, gives you artifact creatures menace. At the beginning of your end step, create a 0/0 colorless construct artifact creature token with this creature gets +1/+1 for each artifact you control. Otherwise known as power and toughness equal to the number of artifacts you control. I don't know why they didn't word it that way, that'd have been more natural sounding, but whatever. The deck also comes with Ayla Artful Provocateur as an alternative commander choice. And they are a 4-mana Fairy Warlock, a 2/3 with Flying Death Touch lifelink. All the creatures you control with Flying get +1/+0, and whenever you cast an artifact or enchantment spell, create a 1/1 blue Fairy creature token with Flying. Now, after having a flick through the deck, there is some flyers, but not enough to really run her as the commander. I guess there's a lot of artifact and artifact creature spells in the deck, so you would make a lot of fairies, but that seems like something you'd want for a different deck. Like, she wants to be a fairy deck, not really an artifact deck, I guess. But she's nice. And then the deck also comes with Sharam the Hegemon, a 6-mana 5/5 flyer. When it enters the battlefield, you return target artifact card from your graveyard to the battlefield, which is nice. Now, one thing I want to address is I've seen people mentioning that the printing on these is quite dark. However, where's the card I wanted to use? This the example. However, as you can actually see, compare it to Soul Link, which amusingly has Urza and Mishra on the artwork, a card that I do believe does not appear in these decks, which, like, what? Why? Why is this card not in there? It's literally got Urza and Mishra on the artwork. Anyway, right. You can actually see. Oh, how well? Yeah, you can see that. Like, the newer ones actually have, like, a less saturated and lighter frame. Like, I've got a bunch of cards from that era, and, like, they're all, generally speaking, well, a bunch of cards to hand. Generally speaking, darker frames. The original ones are. So, yeah, that's something I wanted to mention at the start. Not to say the printing is like inherently bad on these ones, but the older cards were notably more saturated in the frame. However, that's not my only comment about the old frame. If you had to say at a glance which one of those was an artifact, without like reading the text line, which would you say? And the answer is, unless you knew, you wouldn't be able to say, because you've got no way of telling an artifact apart from any other card if it's coloured in the old frame, which I think is a bit of a problem, to be honest, as far as card readability goes. It's not like a deal breaker, but like the old frame was clearly not designed for coloured artifacts, and it kind of shows. Okay, so I've got all the legendary creatures at the front. Tesho, Ancestors Apostle. 3 and a white, legendary bird cleric, flying. Whenever you cast a artifact, legendary or saga, return target creature card with converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Which is basically the Sun Titan effect on a different trigger. Which is kind of nice, because that, like, if you wanted to run a mono white deck around that theme, that's a second card that you could stick in that has the same effect. So there's a bit of advice. If you want to make a Teshar deck, get a Sun Titan. You can't bring Sun Titan back with it, but the Sun Titan can bring back literally everything else that's trying to bring back. Then we have Lushiel, Clockwork Scholar, a 3-mana 2/4 Elephant Artificer. Prevent all combat damage that will be dealt to attacking artifact creatures you control, and whenever one or more artifact creatures enter the battlefield under your control, draw a card. This ability triggers only once each turn, which seems fine, I guess. There's Leonin Abunus I'm thinking of that has a similar but better effect, given that it can draw a card more than once a turn. Seems fine though. I'd probably try and run both. Although, one issue with this deck is if you want to try, it's clearly got an old frame theme, and a lot of the additions you're going to want to do to this deck are going to be new frame, unless you can get hold of an old frame version of them. Which Yeah, it's a weird one. Anyway, moving on. Sandwell, Avenger Ace, a 2-mana human pilot, costs 1 white. He's a 3-1. As long as an artifact creature you control is attacking, prevent all combat damage that would be dealt to Sandwell. Whenever Sandwell becomes tapped, exile the top 6 cards of your library. You may cast a vehicle or artifact creature spell from among them, then put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Now, I will say for a fact, this deck doesn't have any vehicles in, which I guess you're playing this dude for literally just the other half, the artifact creature, which, I guess that's nice, but it does seem a bit weird that they have a pilot who cares about vehicles and no vehicles. This might just be an excuse to print him in the old frame, which I guess is fine, and I guess he isn't useless. It's just not the most useful. Well, he's not fully utilized. Then we have a shiny Tornos Solemn Survivor, who looks a little bit purple where that is. Shiny, 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 shiny. You can probably guess where my light is based on the shine effect. Anyway, he's 1 on a blue, Human Artificer, 1/3. Create a token that's a copy of up to 1 target artifact token you control, mill 2 cards. So copy a token, and for 1 an Esper and tap, sacrifice 2 artifact tokens, exile an artifact or creature card from your graveyard. Create a token that's a copy of the exiled card, except it's an artifact in addition to its other types, activate only as a sorcery. So we can make an artifact creature. I'm always a little bit iffy on exiling things forever for an effect. I guess it's fine if the game's not going to go on forever, but it always feels like you're losing resources in the long run. Then we have Master Thopterist. He's 2 blue, Human Artificer, 1/4. Whenever you cast an artifact spell, create a 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature token with flying. Sacrifice 2 artifacts, pay 2, draw a card. That last part is kind of expensive, but I guess he does double up all of your artifacts with artifact creatures, so that's nice, I guess. Then we have Armix, Filigree Thrasher. He's a 2 and a black, 3/2 legendary artifact creature golem, who I originally, when I was sorting this deck out, I put in the wrong pile because, as mentioned, it's hard to identify coloured artifacts in this frame. In fact, his partner, which is interesting, I don't recall noticing any other partner cards in the deck. So you can have 2 commanders if both have partner, and whenever he attacks, you may discard a card. When you do, target creature defending player controls gets -X until end of turn, where X is the number of artifacts you control, plus the number of artifact cards in your graveyard. That's some nice removal. Bit weird if they've only given you 1 partner commander option, though. I guess the partner effect is just kind of dead if there's no other options, unless you're deconstructing the deck. Skull of New Horizons. Oh god, my neck hurts. Don't get old, kids. It's fucking painful. Skull of New Horizons. He removes counters to get you lands. Which is kind of nice, actually. He's like a white Fertilid, which is an interesting prospect. Dig Site Engineer. Indomitable Archangel. A Scars of Mirrodin classic. 4/4 with flying, and Metalcraft that gives all your artifacts Shroud. Vidalcan Humilitor. Metalcraft. That's a new Metalcraft ability. So I don't recognize this guy from original Scars. Oh, actually, before we get on to him, I have some other old frame white cards to hand that we can compare and contrast with. Because, I mean, the colour is a little bit more yellow compared to that one, but the brightness is about the same. I mean, I've got that one, which is a little bit washed out, and then that one. But, you know, the colours don't... It looks... So just because of the light? It seems to be auto-balancing and making it look weird. Oh well. The colours are not too bad on the new ones, I don't think. At least not the white ones. Also, don't mind the Harold McNeil art. I'm just going to leave that one flying. There. Anyway, yes. Vidalcan Humilitor. 4 mana for a 3/4. When he attacks, creatures your opponent's controls lose all... Wait, oh god, that's spicy. Creatures your opponents control lose all abilities and have base power and toughness 1/1 until end of turn. Ooh, that's quite nice. Okay, I guess the deck does have a decent number of things that can create 1/1 flyers for the fairy to be able to make use with them. It's just the dudes themselves don't actually have flying. 4 mana, 2/2. When it enters, creates 2 Thopters. Tap Thopters. Things can't be blocked. Shimmer Dragon. Shimmer Dragon has like slightly more expensive to trigger Metalcraft to get hexproof. It's like 4 artifacts instead of 3. And tap a pair of artifacts to get a card for a 6 mana 5/6 dragon, which is quite nice. Wreck Hunter. Double black. Flash 2/2. Well, that passes the Black Grizzly Bear check. When Wreck Hunter enters the battlefield, choose target player. You create a tapped Power Stone token for each non-land card in that player's graveyard that was put there from the battlefield this turn. That's nice. Creates a bunch of mana rocks. Marionette Master. Master, pleasant dreams that I've been after. 6 mana, 1/3, fabricate 3. Whenever an artifact you control dies, target opponent loses life equal to the marionette's power. That's an interesting thing to have fabricate on. So you can either make it bigger or get more triggers, or ideally, buff it externally and get both. Shame it's a regular creature, they're not an artifact creature though, because with some of the things in this deck, it's a bit easier to buff artifact creatures. Though I guess you could make a copy of it that's an artifact creature. War Surgeons, plural. 6 mana, 6/5 with Fear. And each artifact creature card in your graveyard has Encore. Its Encore cost is equal to its mana cost. Interesting that I believe that's a new card with Fear. I want to look that guy up now. Oh, why not War? Yeah, that's a new card. Thought so. Weird that they're bringing Fear back, considering that they replaced Fear with Intimidate and then Intimidate with Menace. For considering how hard it was for people to interact with it. Weird that they brought Fear back. Yeah, anyway, that's interesting. And then we come to the colored artifact creatures, which if you didn't look at the type line, you wouldn't know from looking at it. Anyway, Baleful Strix is kind of great. Flying Death Touch and draw a card when it enters on a blue-black 1/1. It's kind of really good. It's really hard to not get a 2-for-1 with Baleful Strix. Then we've got a Chrome Copter, 1 white blue for a 1/1 flyer. When it enters the battlefield, reveal the top 2 cards of your library, put one of them into your hand and the other into your graveyard. If you put an artifact card into your hand this way, you gain 3 life. That's kind of nice, actually. Bronze Golem, 5 mana, X5, Double Strike, and Ward 2. Gives your other stuff Ward 2, and has power equal to the number of artifacts you control. That is quite spicy. Angel of the Ruins, a 7 mana, flying 5/7, with plane cycling, which is nice, although I think there's only one land that isn't a basic plains that it can fetch with that ability. We'll come back to that one later, because there's not many types non-basics in here. I think I saw 1, maybe 2. Ideally, if you're running stuff like that, you want to be able to fetch all of your colors with it, because it can get non-basic planes. Anyway, when it enters the battlefield, exile up to 2 target artifacts and or enchantments. Ethereum Sculptor, kind of great little Shards of Alara dude. 2 mana 1/2 that makes your artifacts cheaper. And in constructed formats, he makes your Ethereum Sculptors 1 cheaper. More Ethereum, Master of this time, instead of just a Sculptor of. Power and toughness equal to the number of artifacts you control. Artifact creatures you control get +1/+1. He is kind of nice. Another dude with power equal to the number of artifacts you control. This one with just flying for a 4-drop. Kind of nice. That was Filigree Attendant. Aethersworn Adjudicator, a 5-drop for 4 Videlcan Knight. With flying, tap to destroy a creature or enchantment for 1 white black. That's kind of spicy. It's Pseudo Vindicate on a stick. And for 2 and a blue, untap him. Yes, very spicy. Sharding Sphinxter hits people and Thopters fall out. 6 mana, 4/4 flyer. 7 mana, 2/2 flyer with affinity for artifacts, and when he enters, draw 2 cards. Which is kinda spicy. And Noxious Gearhulk, one of the only mono-black cards in the deck. 6 mana, 5/4 menace. When he enters the battlefield, destroy another target creature. Creatures destroyed this way gain life equal to its toughness. Eat a dude. Steel Overseer. Now we're getting into our colourless artifacts. And just for a point of comparison, the colours on the artifacts are actually pretty close to the originals. I don't know what TCC was complaining about. A lot of the colours on these seem fine. Looks a little bit different on the camera, but I think that's just the sleeve. In person, they look pretty accurate. Chief of the Foundry. Oh, I didn't actually discuss Steel Overseer. Steel Overseer is kind of really good. On Jules 2012, I think it was when we got access to him. Jules of the Planeswalkers 2012. If you were playing against the artifact deck or with the artifact deck and you had a Steel Overseer in your opening hand, or even better, two of them, you were basically guaranteed a win or a loss if you were against it. Unless you got a good way of removing it, which often you didn't. Chief of the Foundry. He is an artifact creature lord. 3 mana, 2/3. Etched Champion. 3 mana, 2/2. Protection from all colours as long as metal crap. Yeah, I kind of prefer the original artwork. In fact, the original artwork would have probably also still matched with the old frame. Oh well. Sad Robot. Sad Robot looking particularly sad there. Solemn Simulacrum. 4 mana, 2/2. When he enters, get a basic land. When he dies, get a card. Darksteel Juggernaut. Yeah, that's interesting comparing the two, because Hexavus, to go with all the other numbered things that do a thing. 6 mana, flying, enters with 6 +1/+1 counters. Pay 1, remove a counter, put a flying counter on another target creature. Remove a counter from another creature you control, put a +1/+1 counter on Hexavus. Trade counters for money. Steel Hellkite with new artwork. Apparently I'm using all my Steel Hellkites. Oh well. With the power of editing, maybe. We'll have a comparison. And yeah, 6 mana, flying. Has fire breathing and can blow up things that are owned by people he's hit. Mere Battlesphere. A chunky 7-drop Mere that makes a bunch of Meres and can hit people with Meres. Mere Explosion! And there's the original. Interesting that the artwork is so brown on both of them. Right, and that's the end of the artifact creatures. Now we get on to the equipments. Skull Clamp, naturally. I was never particularly fond of that artwork of Skull Clamp, though. Do I have one to hand? Probably not in my rares folder because it wasn't a rare. Yeah, probably my least favourite artwork of the Skull Clamp. But still, it's a Skull Clamp. It is nice, and it is a Skull Clamp. Cranial Plating. Because of course, cranial plating. Another one that's interestingly quite brown, even on the original artwork, which looks quite good on the old frame. This isn't the original Swiftfoot boots from the deck. This is actually one that I got from the extra 2-card booster that came with the pack. The original one is here. And what's interesting is they're different templatings. The non-foil is on 2 extra line, well, 1 extra line of text and 1 extra line of flavor text. And it's just a weird decision. But yeah, anyway, shiny Swiftfoot boots. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, there was a premium version of this deck, wasn't there? Yeah, I believe there was. I am given to wonder which templating the premium version of the deck had. But anyway, Swiftfoot boots, quite nice. Lightning Greaves would have been nicer, given this deck doesn't have many things that care about togs in your dudes. But Swiftfoot boots is nice. And that was all the equipments. Then we come to instants and sorceries. The Spark. 1 on a black, exile target permanent with mana value 4 or greater. Then Vindicate. 1 white, black, sorcery, blow up a thing. Kaboom. Then we have Sphinx's Revelation. X, white, blue, blue. Gain X life, draw X cards. Quite nice. I'm also not sure where that artwork is from. If that's new or not, but it is nice. Then we have a Swords to Plowshares with recent artwork. Unbreakable Formation. Indestructible for 3 mana, and if you cast it during your main phase, your dudes get a +1/+1 counter and vigilance until end of turn. Urza's Ruinous Blast, a legendary sorcery. Exile all non-land permanents that aren't legendary. There is a decent number of legendary things in this deck, all things considered, although it could be more. Austere Command. A very nice command with new artwork. 6 mana, sorcery, choose to destroy all artifacts, control enchantments, destroy all creatures with power 3 or less, or 4 or greater. Phyrexian Rebirth, rounding out the suite of Wrath effects in this deck. Destroy all creatures, then get an XX horror. Preordain, 1 blue scry to draw a card. March of Progress. 1 with the machine. Draw cards equal to the highest converted mana cost among artifacts you control for 4 mana. That is probably quite nice. Tempered Steel. Yeah, Tempered Steel is quite nice. It's like Glorious Anthem for artifact creatures, but does doubly effect. And interestingly, it's an old brown artifact. Thopter Spy Network. 4 mana. At the beginning of your upkeep, get a Thopter. Whenever one or more artifact creatures you control hit a player, get a card. But only 1. Bident of Thassa. A 4 mana, costing 2 double blue, legendary enchantment artifact. That gives all your creatures curiosity and makes your opponents attack if you want them to. This is another one that is a little bit weird with the templating. Like, it's a legendary enchantment artifact, and you'd get none of that from the templating, which just makes it a little bit hard to see, I think. Good card, though. New artwork as well. Artwork of post-Kiora stealing the Bident. Relic of Progenitus. Apparently the chase card in this Precon, which it doesn't actually do a whole lot, although it is some nice graveyard hate, and it can easily replace itself for quite cheap. But it's more expensive because it's just not been reprinted much. It's valuable because it's in short supply, not because it's amazing. I mean, I guess it does what it does pretty well, but yeah. Moving on. Kayla's Music Box. Oh, it's got a white color identity, that's interesting. 2 mana legendary artifact. Pay a white, tap it, look at the top card of your library, then exile it face down. Until end of turn, you may play cards you own exiled with Kayla's Music Box. That is some very slow pseudo card draw, but it is quite interesting. It's like you get a second hand. Then Thopter Shop. 3 mana. Whenever you lose some artifact creatures, draw a card. Triggers only once a turn. And then for 3 mana, one of which white, get a 1/1 Thopter. Buy a Thopter. Soul Ring. New artwork, old frame. Little bit weird, but okay. I've mentioned my thoughts on Soul Ring before. Honestly, I don't like that it's still in the format. Any card in 98% of decks should just probably be in no decks. Let us have our creativity back. Let us have games that aren't determined by who has a Soul Ring or not. At least in 1v1 Commander. I play a lot of 1v1 Commander, okay. Liquid Metal Torque. An interesting variant of Liquid Metal Coating, in that it can't hit lands, but it can tap for mana. It's an interesting effect, because the original Liquid Metal Coating got used by red players so that they could blow up whatever they felt like. Which I guess that's the fixed version of it, in that it can't hit lands, and red was using it as a cheap way to blow up lands, but also artifacts. Sorry, but also enchantments and things. Thought Vessel. 2 mana, you have no maximum hand size, add 1 colorless to your mana pool. It's a little bit surprising that this deck doesn't have Reliquary Tower, considering how much of the deck is colorless. You could easily get away with a Reliquary Tower in here. Then we have a Signet, and a Signet, and a Signet. Quite nice. Well, this deck is kinda lousy with 2 mana rocks. Talking of 2 mana rocks. That other card that's in like 95 to 98% of all Commander decks. At least it's less OP than the Soul Ring, but still, I don't like auto-includes. Then we have the Fetch Lands, starting with a pseudo Fetch Land in Ash Barrens, and then Evolving Wilds, and that is all the Fetch Lands in the deck, which honestly for me is a little bit light. This deck's got 36 lands in, and 36 lands, and 2 of them are Fetch Lands. I often favor going closer to 40 lands with more like 10 fetch lands. If you're not willing to splash out on the expensive fetches, that can slow your deck down a bit. But having 40 lands in at the start means that you are much more likely to get the lands you need to play. And having 10 fetch lands in means that you, after playing a couple of your fetches, you have many less lands in your deck. So you're much less likely to draw a land later on when you don't want them. But also, while we're here with an Evo Wilds, I don't think it's that dark compared to some of the others. It's a little bit dark. It's also it's a little bit more brown saturated, but got a few things here to compare to. And honestly, I'm kind of not seeing it. Yeah, it is maybe 5 or 10% too dark, but it's well within. It's well within what I'd consider the range of colours that you'd get in them before. Because I mean, like here we've got a revised edition Badlands, which is on the pale side. Let's play out this top loader. Like the Badlands is quite pale, but it's quite pale compared to like a lot of those there. Yeah, I don't think these are especially dark. The old frame cards were never very consistent in the coloration anyway. So it's more than likely that the original art was deliberately a little bit dark to compensate for how mixed the printing was. And they just never uncompensated for it, but I mean, like, you know, does that look that bad to you? It doesn't look that bad to me. Now I have time to put these back in the deck I pulled them out of. I guess I'll do that in a sec. Anyway, moving on. Path of Ancestry. Intercept, taps for an anything. A wordy way of saying taps 4 mana of any colour, but only usable in Commander. Or I guess in that other format that has a commander that they tried to make a thing, but it didn't really go anywhere. When you cast something that shares a creature type with your commander with that mana, scry one. Kinda nice, I guess. Arcane Sanctum. Enters taps for an anything. Technically strictly worse than the last one, but, you know, what are you gonna do? Spire of Industry. Tap to add a colorless, or pay a life and get 1 mana of any color, but only if you have an artifact. I want to say it's strictly worse than City of Brass and the new version of City of Brass, but not technically because those can't tap for colorless, whereas that can. Then we have Exotic Orchard, taps for an anything that your opponents have. Command Tower, tap for an anything, but only usable in Commander. I have less hate for Command Tower than the other auto-include in all decks cards, like Sol Ring and the 2-drop that I don't remember. Yeah, I can't really explain. It's just Command Tower. Bajuka Bog feels like a weird one, like a little bit. It's one of the few sources that only gives you black. Like, I guess Bajuka Bog, exiling a graveyard for basically free is quite nice. It does just feel weird that they don't have the rest of the cycle. Or, like, many monocolored lands in general, to be honest, actually. It feels like it's just there for the graveyard hate, which I guess is fine. Talking of odd cycles, Sky Shroud Expanse. It's basically the activated ability of the Azure Signet on a land. Now, admittedly, the enemy-colored pairs of this cycle don't exist, but the allied ones do, and we only get one of them, which is weird. River of Tears, another one-off from a cycle. Add blue, or if you played a land this turn, add black, so in the turn you play, it taps for black. Which is a little bit weird, given that this deck does not have very many black things in it. Prairie Stream, a plains island that enters tapped unless you control 2 or more basic lands. One of the things you can fetch with that kind of expensive angel, with plane cycling. Yeah, thought so. There's the island swamp version of that cycle. Notably, isn't a plane, so you can't get it with the plane cycling one. And they neglected to include the enemy pair, or a enemy pair, dual lands like that. So you have no way of getting access to black with that plane cycling angel. Which I think is a little bit of a weird decision, if I'm honest. Then we have Azurus Chancery, Dimir Aqueduct, and the Orzhov Basilica. The Orzhov Basilica. A nice, if slow, cycle. Like, they basically count for 2 land drops each, which can get you quite far. And then we have Temple of Silence, Temple of Enlightenment, and the Temple of Deceit, which I'm kind of down on these lands. The scry one is nice, I guess, but I'd rather have the mana the turn that I play them. And then we come to the artifact lands. This deck actually has all of the artifact lands it could have, I believe. Darksteel Citadel, Ancient Den, Vault of Whispers, Seat of the Synod for the mono-coloured ones, and then Goldmire Bridge, Mistvault Bridge, and Razortide Bridge for the dual-coloured ones, which is quite nice, although they're still untapped. But you know, artifacts are relevant in this deck. And then basics. It's got 3 swamps. One thing that bugs me is there's only 3 of them, and yet they still couldn't find 3 different artworks for them. That the coloration on the basics also seems a little bit weird. Like it's a little bit yellow, which I guess maybe that plagues all of them, but it's easier to see on these. Like there's 4 islands and only 2 artworks among them. Yeah, that's not the camera. They do just look a little bit yellow. And then there's 4 planes, again, with only 2 artworks between them. Looking at it, the fact that it only gives us 3 swamps says to me that they dropped one of the basics for Bajuka Bog directly. Which, yeah, I guess. But then, why not just go down to 9 basics and have 2 other spell lands like the Helmar Depths and whatever one of the good white ones is? Because I would have quite liked the Helmar Depths. The Helmar Depths would have gone well in there. And there's not especially many reasons to care about having that many basics in the deck. Good timing. I guess the camera's decided to run it there. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Goodbye. Right. Microphone. Did I just knock off? Oh, that's probably fine. Where am I? Urza's Iron Alliance. I am a prepared content creator. I can't see my fucking preview. Okay, where am I lining this up? There. Let's bring the camera a bit closer. Maybe wondering why I don't zoom in, because this is actually a prime lens and doesn't have a zoom. There we go. It is like there. Boop.